Grace Point! Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, everybody. How y'all doing? Y'all feeling good? Let's stand. Move around, dance around with us, sing with us. We're glad you're here. Here we go. This is what we came for. This is why we're here, to love our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors far and near. We're just one big family, and everyone belongs. You don't have to ever be alone. Welcome home. Oh, welcome home. Yeah. Stand with me in the sunshine. With me in the rain. I'll hold your hand, you can hold mine, and we will weather any day. Oh yeah, come on, sing it with us. This is what we came for. This is why we're here, to love our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors far and near. We're just one big family, and everyone belongs. You don't have to ever be alone. Welcome home. Yeah, welcome home. All right, listen. We have burdens to carry. We have sorrow and pain. Here's the good part. But if we keep on sharing, every little thing is gonna be okay. Oh, that's right. Come on. Yeah. This is what we came for, and this is why we're here, to love our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors far and near. And we're just one big family, and everyone belongs. You don't have to ever be alone. Welcome home. Yeah, welcome home. Come on, y'all sing one more time. This is what we came for. This is why we're here, to love our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors far and near. We're just one big family, and everyone belongs. You don't have to ever be alone. Welcome home. Yeah, welcome home. Welcome home, Grace Point. We're so glad that you are with us. We want everybody who walks in these doors to understand and know and believe that you are loved, you're celebrated, no matter who you are, no matter who you love, no matter how you exist in this world, you are celebrated and affirmed just as you are. So we're glad you're here, and we would love for y'all to sing these songs with us. We got a great service coming up. This is something that everybody knows. Crowded Table. We got Brandi Carlile fans in the house. Yeah, let's all sing it. You can hold my hand when you need to let go. I can be a mountain when you're feeling valley low. I can be a street light showing you the way home. And you can hold my hand when you need to let go. Oh, I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, and bring us back together when the day is done. If we want a garden, we're gonna have to sow the seeds, plant a little happiness, and let the roots run deep. If it's love that we give, then it's love that we breathe. If we want a garden, we're gonna have to sow the seed. That's right. Come on, y'all sing it. Oh, I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, and bring us back together when the day is done. The door is always open, and your picture's on my wall. Everyone's a little broken, and everyone belongs. Yeah, everyone belongs. Oh, I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, and bring us back together when the day is done, and bring us back together when the day is done. Y'all sound so good. You look so good. And I definitely see a lot of new faces around. So what we'd love for you to do right now is introduce yourself maybe to somebody new, have a conversation with someone you haven't seen in a while. This is our meet and greet section, our meet and three section. We love you. We'll be back.
Good morning, Grace Point. Woo! Okay, we're gonna try that again. Good morning. I'm Tiffany. Hey. I lead our kids, students, college, all those things. It is time for our kids ministry moment. So if you're a kid, 3rd grade and under, I invite you to come hang out in the middle over here. And adults, if you need to sit with them, you can. If you're older than 3rd grade and you want to come hang out, you can. If you are online, this is a time, if you have a kid, that this is for you too. So come hang out, friends. If you are an adult and you're like, I don't have a seat, all the seats that small children were just in, they will not be going back to them, so you can take those seats and it'll be okay. There we go. Okay, friends. You're okay. Yeah, you can sit with her. Okay, good morning. Are y'all awake? Yeah? No? Raise your hand if you're awake. Okay, kind of, sort of. Okay, I have questions for you today. You ready? Raise your hand if your favorite color is blue. Okay, raise your hand if your favorite color is purple. Pink, yellow, adults, you can participate too. Red, orange, rainbow, black. There are, okay, that's a surprise actually. Brown, white, any other, sparkles. Some of you are raising your hand for everything. Green, that's my favorite color, my bad. Green, okay. Raise your hand if you love to go swimming. Raise your hand if you love to ride bikes. Raise your hand if you like to color, dance, sing, Legos. Be careful raising your hand for Legos. I may invite you to come hang out with kids ministry, okay? So, friends, I want you to look around. Does every other person in the room look just like you? No, we know this, right? We have different hair colors, different hair textures. Some of our hair is really curly. Some of our hair is not curly at all. Do we all have the same melanin in our skin? Do y'all remember? No, it kind of looks, some of us do. Some of us, we like the crayon peach color a lot, and that's okay. So here's the thing. Do you know that God made you very different from everyone else? Do you remember this? We've talked about this a couple of times. Why do you think God made you different from everyone else? Can you say it in the mic?
So then you're special.
So then you're special. Do you want to say it in the mic? No. Do you want to just say it in your head? Katie, do you want to say it in the mic? Let's pass Katie a mic.
Okay. Love you, mommy, mama.
Okay, Katie, why are you special?
Does me nice.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, you are. Can I have the mic back?
Yes, ma'am.
I was not sure if we were going to get it back. Okay, so God made you special, right? You look different and you like different things. And on the inside, some of us are really, really, really good helpers. Some of us are really good listeners. Raise your hand if you are crazy good at helping your friends. Like that's the thing you're really good at. Raise your hand if you think you're really, really, really good at listening when someone has something they want to tell you. Raise your hand if you're the really good helper who likes to pick up things. And like, when I ask you for help, you're like the person. Yes. Okay? So God made us all with all these different types of gifts and all these things that we like. And all of it's special. Okay? And so the thing we want you to remember, and adults in the room, that God made you in the image of love, by love and for love. And because God is love and we are to be loving to other people. Can we try to do that? Awesome. Okay, everyone stand up. It's time to go to the back. So if you have a kid to kids ministry, you will go back here. If you have a youth today, there'll be a different time that you will go to youth ministry. Come on. Will you take them back there? 03. I have one more announcement. I'm sorry. If you are background certified, checked nursery worker, we have a lot of babies today, and we could use one more person. And if you're like, I don't want to do that, or you're very interested, come talk to me. But if there is a nursery worker, we would like to have you today. Join us. I'll pay for your lunch.
Hello, Hello, my name is Emily Wire. My pronouns are she, her, and I have a few announcements for you today. I see a lot of new faces, so I just want to say that this QR code that's up here and on your chairs, if you scan that, that's going to be how you get connected. If you fill out the Connect card, then you can sign up for the newsletter, do all the good stuff. Okay, first, we are online only next Sunday. So we're streaming at 11 a.m. We're not going to be here, so don't show up, or else you're going to be alone. Speaking of streaming, we have 4 or 5 baptisms right after this service today. So everyone can head through the community room and head back to the baptismal little feeding water trough that we have, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. And also for those of you who are online, we are going to stream it for you. So you can just follow. I think Adam's going to rig something up for us, and we'll show you the baptisms. So that's pretty cool. Right after the baptisms, we have Common Ground, which is our group for 30, 40 somethings. They're going to be having lunch at the Wedge right over here. And then tomorrow night is the first night of the book study on this book right here. It's All About Love by Bell Hooks. It's led by Taylor Middlebrook and Kyle Gregory. And it's going to be really good. It's going to start at 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m., either right here in this room or back in the community room. All right, this next one I'm very excited about. I know that a lot of you haven't been around Grace Point for a very long time, but this is something that has stood out in my mind in the entire GP history as being one of my very favorites. It is happening, GP karaoke. Yes. So prepare your song, whether you are a professional singer or a shower singer or whatever you do, or if you just want to come and watch people and meet new people and hang out. We are going to have hot dogs for you, and then you are going to bring appetizers, desserts, non-alcoholic beverages, whatever you want, and then we're going to open this door right here, and if you want to purchase additional beverages from the Wedge, you can do so. All right, so mark your calendars. It's going to be Sunday, July 30th from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. Yeah. GP's goal is to foster a safe, affirming, and transformative community. If you want to be part of that, you can text any dollar amount to 84321. You can go to gracepoint.net/give, scan the QR code, or Venmo us. That was a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. There are some chairs down front. If you don't have a chair, if you're standing, we can probably scoot in a little bit too if you want. Y'all look so beautiful today. I'm looking out, and gosh, I'm so glad you're all here. Will y'all stand with us again? We've got a song. Also online, I don't know if we officially said hi to you, but hey, online. Can we wave to the online community? You don't have to stand. You can stay in your recliner if you want. But this is a song, I don't know if you, like me, were handed an image of God that we learned wasn't actually a good image, not a loving God, not a God who affirms everyone. That's the God that I was handed as a kid growing up in the context I grew up in, and I had to kind of let go of a lot of ideas that I thought God was. And Grace Point has helped tremendously in reframing what I believe God is. And I can truthfully say, and this song will attest to it, that I do believe that there is a God and that God is good, that God is faithful, God can be trusted, all of those things that we once were told that we had to believe. Now I actually do believe, because my image of God and reference of God has changed. And so if you're like me and you want to find meaning in these words, you can assign whatever meaning you want to as we sing this. But we'd love for y'all to join and sing this song called Good to Me. You're not the God I was taught to fear. You're not a God who condemns. No longer afraid, the shame has disappeared. I have no need to pretend, 'cause you're a God who You're a God who cares, and you understand, and you've always been there for me. God, you are so good. You're good to me. Your faithfulness is all I will ever need. All of my days I've tasted and seen. Forever I will say you are good to me. Oh yes, you are good to me. Once I let go of what I thought was true, I started learning to see. I had to give up on what I thought I knew, and that's when my soul was set free. 'Cause you're a God who loves, you're a God who cares, and you understand, and you've always been there for me. So I sing, God, you are so good. You're good to me. Your faithfulness is all I will ever need. All of my days I've tasted and seen. Forever I will say you are good to me. Oh yes, you are good to me. Good to me. God, you are so good to me. It's real simple. Sing that with us. Good to me. God, you are so good to me. Sing it again. Sing good to me. Oh, good to me. Oh, God, you are so good. Yes, you are to me. One more time. Sing good to me. Good to me. Yes. God, you are so good. I believe you're good to me. Oh, God, you are so good. You're good to me. Your faithfulness is all I will ever need. And all of my days I've tasted and seen. Forever I will say you are good to me. Yes, you are. You are good to me. You've been good. You've been faithful. You are good to me. Oh, I believe you are good to me. Oh. Amen, amen. Thank you so much. You can be seated.
Thank you so much. Hi, friends. Hey. Good morning, Lee. How are you? It is good to see you and everybody else. We're thrilled you're here. If we haven't met, my name's Josh. I'm the lead pastor here, and it's just so great to see all of you. We are celebrating baptism today, so just a couple things. We're going to give about a 10-minute buffer between the end of this service and when we go out there so we can get the chairs put up. So that gets done first and gives everybody time to kind of reset. And then we'll go down this hall to the community room, out on the back deck, and then down some steps. And we had to put the trough that we're baptizing in because we're classy. We had to put it down on another level so it didn't break through the deck. Thought that might ruin the experience if it just completely collapsed the deck while we were out there enjoying it. And yeah, it's going to be beautiful. I'm going to get to baptize some of my kids today, so I took an extra Claritin this morning for the allergy attack that might ensue. We're starting a new series today called Rhythm, Spiritual Practices for Progressive Christians. Let me just say on the front end, if the word spiritual bothers you, just call them practices. Deal? So don't let that word hang you up. But growing up in church, we were taught to do certain things. Like there are these practices that you do, and you do them for different reasons. One of the reasons you do these certain things, like pray, read your Bible, go to church, maybe be generous, that's maybe one. The reason you do that is to kind of prove how much you love God, right? Or the reason you do that is to get God on your side or to show God how serious you are about God. You kind of do it, or you do it, maybe one of the reasons you do it is, can we just be honest, to look really holy in front of everybody else. You ever done that thing where you're fasting and you wanted everybody to know it? Like they're eating a hamburger and you're just sort of like, well, I don't eat hamburgers today because I love Jesus more than you do. There's sort of that kind of vibe to it. So we're going to talk about why we might do them, but it's not for any of those reasons. I don't have rhythm. Can I just be honest? I was born without rhythm. If you ever see clapping happening during a song, I won't be participating. And it's not because that's the last vestige of Southern Baptist in me, like I'm just not going to clap. It's not that. It's because I have been known to take entire rooms full of people off. Does anybody here have really good rhythm? I know Adam has really good rhythm. He's a drummer. And I don't know if I could take Adam off rhythm, but I bet there are some of you in this room, if we were just listening to a song, I would lead you astray, as the internet accuses me of doing anyway. I would definitely be taking you down the path to destruction in terms of not being able to clap on beat, right? Like it's just not a thing I'm good at. I never have been. But what I've heard is, and I was doing some research this week, you can actually, they say, learn rhythm. Like you can practice. And I just don't care enough about it to practice, so I'm not going to. But they say you can practice and you can get better at being, maybe not perfect, but being better at being on beat. The truth is, all of life has rhythm to it. It's not just music, right? The way we live our lives, it has a rhythm. The word rhythm comes from this Greek word rhinos, which means to flow. Isn't that the vibe the word rhythm creates? It's just kind of a flow. If you could sort of encapsulate rhythm, this is going to be for a certain part of the audience here today, but if you could encapsulate rhythm in a person, like flow in a person, doesn't it just seem like it would be the Fonz? I mean, he just has this way, and if you don't know who the Fonz is, you're really missed out. Like, he had this way of just sliding into a room, just like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, there's just that rhythmic vibe. All of life has rhythm to it. And that's true of what we might call the spiritual life or our journey, our path to transformation. That has a rhythm to it. And what I want to talk about in this series is how can we make sure that we're more in sync? How can we make sure we're more in rhythm? What are some things? And so we're going to explore some things. There are standard things everybody talks about when they talk about spiritual practices. But I want to talk about some of those maybe, but I want to talk about things that we've never been told were actually spiritual practices. But first, let's just explore, why would we do this? I mean, why do you practice anything? How many of you play an instrument? Okay, how many of you just picked it up and perfectly played it right away? And how many of you spent a very long time? But I see a couple hands. Shane did it, just picked it up, played it right away. Kind of Ron Burgundy style on the jazz flute. Anybody else, do you just practiced it for a long time? How many of you in here played a sport? Did you practice that? Yeah. Anybody ever ran a marathon? Wow. I have questions. Why? But outside of that, was someone chasing you? Do you need help? Did you just get up and run a marathon, or did you train? Yeah. So essentially what happens when you practice, I've been on airplanes a lot lately. I really hope that whoever's flying that plane that this is not their first time and that they've practiced, because practice builds muscle memory. And the same thing is true when we do and engage in certain things that help us become different kinds of people. So when we talk about spiritual practices, we're not trying to impress God. We're not trying to impress anybody else. We're not trying to get God on our side. Good news, God is already on your side. What we're trying to do is build a kind of muscle memory in us that forms us into a certain kind of person. So when we talk about the purpose of spiritual practices first, it's about opening and enlarging the heart. How many of you watch the news on a regular basis? Why? Would you agree with me that there are plenty of things, when you watch the news, there are plenty of reasons to harden and close off your heart? Would you agree? Yeah. How many of you ever had a difficult relationship with a person? Yeah. People can make you want to close off and harden your heart. Spiritual practices are about keeping your heart soft, keeping your heart open, because transformation does not happen to a closed, hard heart. And so we engage in spiritual practices as a way of saying, I want to make sure that my heart isn't shrinking and collapsing. I want to make sure that it is open and it is expanding, because it's about expanding this awareness we have that all of life is a gift. It's about, I got to be honest with you, I'm not a super aware person a lot of times. They could move something in this room, and in 6 months I'll look and see it. I'll be like, when did that happen? And somebody will say 6 months ago, right? I can be pretty aloof at times at noticing things. And what spiritual practices do is it helps us keep our antenna up. It helps keep us like, oh, there's a lot more going on here than I thought. And there are opportunities all around me to do good, to express kindness. There's all this opportunity around me all the time, and I'm just kind of going on autopilot. It's kind of that thing where you get somewhere and you're like, how did I get here? Anybody else do that? Talk about muscle memory. Like you made an entire trip and you had no idea you were doing it. Terrifying, but it happens. And it's sort of this, oh, no, I don't want to just get to the end of the journey. What I want to do is pay attention on the journey. I want to be aware of what's going on the journey. And ultimately, spiritual practices next. It's an invitation to transformation. Really, it's inviting us on this journey to become certain kinds of human beings. That is now how I understand the point of faith. It is no longer to get God off of my back. It is no longer to get an afterlife destination that's plush. The way I understand faith now is it's to help transform me into a certain kind of human being, a human being with a greater capacity to love, a human being with a greater capacity for compassion, a human being with a greater capacity for generosity. I want to move in that direction, and I think these practices are helpful in making that happen. But I want to begin our exploration of these practices with one that seems a little counterintuitive, because I bet you've been told your entire life not to trust it. And I want to talk about your experience. How many of you in this room right now are alive? Okay, we're worried about the rest of you. This is super pertinent if you're breathing, okay? You have experiences all the time. And I bet, like me, you were taught, do not trust your experiences, do not trust your feelings, don't trust any of that. And then I bet somebody told you that in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, it says, the heart is devious above all else. It is perverse. Who can understand it? Well, that's lovely. Next year at Valentine's Day, when I see hearts put up everywhere, I'm just going to go write Jeremiah 17:9 on them, just to really remind people that the heart is deceitful and devious and perverse. Here's the thing. This is, when people rip this out of Jeremiah 17 and quote it at us, it's a terrible way to read the Bible, because it's taking something out of a very specific context. The context for this text is that the people of Judah, where Jeremiah lived, and he's a prophet, he's God's representative to the people, they are behaving and living in very unjust ways, and they're going after other gods. And Jeremiah is speaking on behalf of God and calling the people out and calling them back toward faithfulness, toward justice. And when we universalize every particular in the Bible, we can get in really big trouble, right? When we just randomly take a verse out and don't know anything about it and then start applying it willy-nilly to everybody and everything. Listen, I'll be honest with you. If this was supposed to be applied to every human being, I disagree with Jeremiah. Because I know human beings who have really beautiful hearts. And yes, we are capable of doing some devious and perverse things as human beings. But innately, I mean, have y'all ever met a kid? Now, I know that sometimes you might get one, it's a little difficult, right? But generally, when you meet kids, like they're just alive with this sense of wonder and joy, and they like this idea of, I mean, I see kids all the time, that they share better than adults do often, and they just have this ever-expanding heart for the world around them. I don't think their hearts are devious. I don't think they're perverse. And I don't think this verse applies to us in every situation. And of course, what people would say is, well, since you can't trust your heart at all, because, devious and perverse part, here's the deal. You have to find a source to tell you what to do with your life. And so guess what the source is going to be? The Bible. And growing up Southern Baptist, in our belief statement, we actually had this line that said, the Bible is the final authority on all matters of faith and practice. Can I ask a question? Whose interpretation of the Bible? Like seriously, whose interpretation? The pastor who's writing that's preaching the sermon, the church? I mean, we have 40-some thousand denominations now. We just can't agree with each other on what even the Bible is or how it should be translated. You ever picked up translations of the Bible and put them side by side and read them and just gone, that is wildly different? Yeah, because translations are interpretations. And so I think if we're going to give all the authority for every decision we have to make to the Bible, we should ask some questions. Because if you're going to give all the authority away to something else, I think just doing that without asking questions is pretty irresponsible. And here's the reality, that I think what Protestants have done is we shifted our authority from a person, the Pope, to paper, the Bible. Because we wanted some authority, because not only does it tell us what to do, but it tells us that we're right. And look, y'all, I love the Bible so much. Talk about it so much. I'm great at parties. Invite me to your party. We'll exegete the text. It's fantastic. But look, here's the thing. I love the Bible, but we ask too much of it. We ask it to do and be things that it isn't, and that it was never set up to bear. We put expectations on it that it cannot fulfill. Not because there's a problem with the Bible, but because there's a problem with how we're approaching the Bible. And I actually don't think the Bible can stand up as the only source for how we process the world. Because we're dealing with things sometimes that the Bible hasn't dealt with. You know what? Like in the Bible, they didn't know about watches and airplanes, and they just didn't know about things that we know about. And so to just vest all of our authority there, it can be really problematic. And so I went to seminary, I did 3/4 or so of a seminary degree at a Methodist seminary called Asbury. Any Methodists in the house? All right, like 2 of you. Sweet. Slowly but surely, we're taking the Methodists. Next, the Presbyterians. So I ended up going to a Methodist school, and coming out of the background I did, Southern Baptist, we were really concerned about y'all, Methodist folk. You did some things we were unsure about. We thought you'd probably get into heaven, but, you wouldn't have front row seats. You understand what I'm saying? Like we weren't sending you to hell, I promise, but you weren't. So I decided I would go to this, and it was a conservative-ish school. The in-person classes were conservative-ish. The online classes were really progressive. Like I had some really progressive teachers. In person, I was kind of the uncomfortable person in the class. Online, I was like the heretic, and professors loved me. All right, that was sort of the experience. But something I got taught at Asbury that I still use on a regular basis is this idea of the Wesleyan quadrilateral. How many of you have heard of the Wesleyan quadrilateral? Sounds like something you should stretch before you start using it, right? Because you could pull something. And essentially, the term was coined by this guy named Albert Outler, but it was a reflection on the work of John Wesley. And as he studied Wesley's work, he realized that John Wesley seemed to make decisions about theology, and he seemed to draw his conclusions by employing 4 different sources. The first source was Scripture. All right, so Wesley would engage the text. The second source was tradition. So what is the tradition said traditionally about whatever this is? The third is reason. My goodness, if Christians would use reason, what kind of world would we be if we would just be a little bit reasonable? And then experience. And experience for Wesley was really important because experience was the taste and see. All right, you can push back on a lot of things. You can push back on scripture and tradition, but when somebody has an experience, they know it in their body and in their mind, in their self, in a way that it's hard to push back on, right? When they have tasted and seen, they cannot untaste and unsee. And we do this all, like we try to introduce things to our kids, right? When they're growing up and they're learning to eat new food. So we'll give them something, and I don't know if your kids, if you have them, did this, but my kids will smell it and then make an immediate decision about whether or not it's good. And then they'll try it, and they'll either like it, or they do that thing where they hold it in their mouth, threatening to spit it everywhere, and they do that dance, and you negotiate, like, I'll give you some water, let's get to the trash can, just don't, right? You do that whole deal. And we do this, how many of you have stuff you just don't like? Okay, I'm gonna throw one out for you. I can't stand cooked broccoli. When I said that at 9 o'clock, that room looked at me like I just punched a puppy in front of them. They looked at me as if I just said the worst thing. Like somebody audibly gasped. And I was like, this is the thing I said that pushed you over the edge? It's broccoli that's the dividing line here? I love raw broccoli. When I walk into a place and they have those, when I walk into a place and they have that vegetable tray, I know I'm at a fancy place. Like, you've done a good job putting this thing together. And I'll eat that all day long. You give me cooked broccoli, there is not enough Velveeta in the world. Just not enough. Something else. I love a good, rare tuna steak. Anybody else? Or like a spicy tuna roll. Like just this piece of raw fish looking back at you. It's delicious. If you pop the can on some StarKist, I can smell that from 100 yards away, and I'm going to feel sick. I just can't do it. We have these things we like and we don't like. We taste and we know, right? I know that that's my thing. Or we taste it and we know I don't really want anything to do with it. Experience is that moment where rubber meets road. It's the moment where we know something in our bodies. Why would we want to discourage people from paying attention to and valuing their experiences? Why would we do that? And I think it comes down to one word, and that word is control. If you can cause people to not trust themselves, and you can position yourself as the person who has, or the institution that has all the answers, and then can direct them into all the places they need to go, then you get to exert a ton of power over people. And you can mobilize people to do some really awful things when you have that kind of power over people, can't you? When I was in high school in the mid to late 90s, this happened with our youth group when, I just need to get this out in the open. Objectively, the mid to late 90s is the best era in music history. I see that hand. Yes, it is. This past Monday night, I checked off a bucket list item, and I saw Matchbox 20 live. Waited 3 years for that show. I sang at the top of my lungs. I can't share any of the videos I took of them singing because I'm overpowering Rob Thomas. It was that kind of experience. So I love mid to late 90s music. It's still, I totally get now why my dad listened to the Doobie Brothers and Fleetwood Mac all the time. I get it, right? Like, that's his era. This is my era. But also, this is not going to hit unless you're a certain age, but in the mid to late 90s, I gave Columbia House and BMG a significant amount of money. And here's, if you don't know, they would make, CDs were new. We were breaking new grounds. And they would have the advertisements in magazines. You know what magazines are? Those things you flip through in doctor's office waiting rooms. And they would have this ad for, like, you can get 10 CDs for a penny each. And then you have to buy 5 more for $1,000 each. I'm pretty sure I still owe them. I check my credit report occasionally just to see if Columbia House pops up. So I had amassed a very valuable collection of music because it's so stinking expensive. And my youth group, our leaders were like, you don't need to listen to that kind of music because that kind of music can influence you to do really bad things, right? So you need to get rid of all your bad music and only listen to Christian music, right? And that was an interesting era in Christian music, right? I mean, I think we all remember when Jesus Freak came out. That was an incredible record. Yeah. Maybe, hey, who wants to do it with me at karaoke night? That's another conversation. Put a pin in that. We'll come back to it later. But I remember taking all, and I loved my music, and I had this big collector, like this big case that was in my car, in 1997 cherry red Chevy Cavalier. Thank you very much. And I would, flip through and drive with my knees and put a new CD in, and it was, and I remember I got rid of all of them because I didn't trust myself to not go and do terrible things because I listened to Matchbox 20. And if you can convince people that you know better than them what they should be doing with their body, what they should be doing with their time, what they should be doing with their resource, if you can convince somebody that they can't trust themselves and only you are the trustworthy one, you can convince them to do a lot. And look, I don't think everybody who's been a part of that, I was a part of that at one point. There was no backroom meeting where we're like, let's get them to give away their CDs. That's going to be awesome. No, there was none of that. I think some people were doing that out of a somewhat genuine concern to try to help me as a teenager not make bad choices. And the way they tried to do it was, let's try to remove all the obstacles that we can so that they don't go down this path to destruction. So I think sometimes it was done out of almost an altruistic care for us. And yet, even with good intentions, it still created a lot of harm and a lot of damage and a lot of trauma. And we've created generations of Christians who don't feel like they're trustworthy. They can't trust themselves. They can't trust their experience. All because they essentially were given this narrative that, no, you need someone else to make the decisions for you. And what's unfortunate about all that, too, is that the Bible, which I feel the need to say again, I love it, it's full of stories of people who were doing the very thing we were told not to do, which is having encounters with the divine or with other humans, and as a result of those encounters, changing their minds and changing their lives and doing things differently in response to their experience. Like Abraham. Abraham has this call, this sense of, I need to pull up stakes. I need to go I don't even know where I'm going, but I know that I have this feeling like I need to be on this nomadic journey to a different place. And I think the divine will let me know when it's time to stop. You think about Jacob is on the run because he swindled and deceived his brother out of his inheritance. And Jacob is about to leave the territory he's known. And in the ancient world, the understanding was gods were sort of landlocked. Like if you went to this place, they had a different god. Your God, like, see ya, come visit again, right? Like Jacob has this vision of this stairway to heaven. And the divine speaks to him and says, Jacob, you're going on this journey. I will go with you, and I will bring you back. Revolutionary idea in the formation of religion. A divine being, reality, that could go with you wherever you go. Then you have Moses, one of the great stories of the Bible. He's out tending sheep, and he sees a burning bush, and he just has this impulse. Like the ground has always been holy. The bush has always been, and he slips off his shoes, and he has this moment where he is invited into God's great vision of liberation, not only for Moses' enslaved people, but for all people everywhere. And then you have Jesus. You may have heard of him. It's kind of popular. Jesus has a couple moments where he has these experiences that are really transformative. He has this moment at baptism where he comes up out of the water and he hears the voice of the divine say, you are my beloved. You bring me great joy. What a formative moment for Jesus. And then if you were here last week, you heard Hunter's sermon. Hunter talked about the time Jesus met somebody, someone different. And he had very clear opinions about people like her. And yet her faith was so great, it caused Jesus to stop in his tracks, and he changed his mind. An experience of someone else caused Jesus to think differently about his work. You have Peter, who had this idea that 99% of the world couldn't be part of this movement. And then the scroll falls down, and he has this vision, and suddenly Peter realizes, oh, this is not my thing to fence in. This is way bigger than I ever imagined. everybody's in. Everybody's in. And then you have Paul, who if we take his own words and we just push Acts out of the way for a minute, you take Paul's own words, and he says, I was persecuting the church. I wasn't a very good guy. But then God was pleased to reveal his son in me. Most translations say to me, and they have a footnote that says it's actually the word in, because they're trying to make it connect. They're trying to make it make sense with the book of Acts, which tells a very different story. But in Paul's words, it's an experience within himself that causes him to leave being an opponent of the Jesus story and become a participant in the Jesus story. Person after person after person, experience after experience after experience. In my own life, that has been so true. Even when I wasn't supposed to be paying attention to it, there was something in me that couldn't totally ignore it. One of the questions people ask me a lot when I'm doing podcasts or conversations like that, they'll say, when did you become an affirming pastor, and what was that process like? And you know what, I always say, I actually don't know. Here's what I know, is I know what I've been taught my entire life, and I know that I had friends, queer friends, who started trusting me enough to come out to me, and there was nothing in me that could not wish and want for them everything I wished and wanted for myself, because I had been taught to love my neighbor as myself. And here's how change always happens, at least in my life, is your heart gets there way earlier, and it takes your head a long time. And so they can control your head, but they cannot ultimately control your heart. I remember being a teenager and being at church around July 4th, and we were singing the Star-Spangled Banner in America the Beautiful, and there's this moment as like a 17-year-old, I went, this is weird. I thought we talked about Jesus here. Why are they marching a flag down the middle of the room? This is weird. And looking back, there was this sense in me like, oh, this blending of whatever this, I didn't have the word for it at the time, but nationalism and the Christian story, when our person was executed by the empire, died resisting the dehumanization and brutality of empire, and now we're singing an ode to an empire in a building designated for talking and singing about this Jesus person. In my experience, I just knew something in my body told me. There were little alarms going off, and I didn't know what to do with it. But the last few years, I figured it out. There's this idea of Christian nationalism that must be condemned and resisted because it's pure evil. And so experience has always been there. We've just been taught, no. Don't pay attention to it, because it's really where the change happens. One of my favorite stories in the New Testament is a story in John 9 where Jesus heals a man who was born blind. And this story begins with Jesus' disciples turning this human being into a theological debate. Aren't you glad we don't do that anymore? Turn human beings into theological debates. And the disciples see the man there and they're like, Jesus! They feel good about this. Like, oh, we've got a good question here. He's going to be really proud of this one. Who sinned, this man or his parents, that caused him to be born blind? All right, because it's got, like, bad things happen. It's got to be somebody's fault. And Jesus sort of gives this response of like, you guys, come on. Nobody sinned. That's not what's going on here. There's no cause and effect. Instead, let's see what God is going to do in the life of this person. And so Jesus heals him. Now you have to remember, I feel like I explain this all the time because I talk about the Gospel of John a lot. And I used to not like the Gospel of John. But once I understood this detail, it changed it for me. So the Gospel of John was written around a time when the community that John represents had gone through a terrible breakup. What I alternatively title the Gospel of John, and I've said it many times here, is it's All Too Well John's version. If you're a Swiftie, that's for you. It's a breakup song. The Gospel of John was written just after his community, people who followed Jesus, but still remained within the traditions and rituals of Judaism, because John was Jewish, the writer of John. They had been expelled from the synagogue. They had been kicked out of the community they had known. They'd been told, you can no longer do that. You can't hold on to this Jesus thing and continue to do this. And so they were kicked out. And so the Gospel of John, which can come off to us 2,000 years later, is very anti-Semitic. It's John, a Jewish person, arguing, pushing back, being angry about this community that has expelled he and his followers. And so what happens next in this story is really important because the religious leaders, if you read this story literally, it can go one way. Let's not read this story literally. Let's see the man who was born blind as John and his community. And what they're trying to express is that for us, Jesus opened our eyes to new realities and new ways of being that we did not know were possible. And then the religious leaders come in, representative of the community that expelled them, and they are very angry and frustrated that Jesus would be doing this sort of thing. And we've got to get to the bottom of it. We can't have somebody going around and healing people all, cavalier. And so what they do is they start sort of an inquest into what happened. And they start interviewing people. And they interview the guy's parents and to make sure he was really born blind. And, they're doing their due diligence. They talked to the man twice. I love the second time. For the second time, they called the man who had been blind. And they said, "Give glory to God. We know that this man, Jesus, is a sinner." Wow. Tell us the truth. We know he's a sinner. Notice what the guy says. "I do not know whether he is a sinner." Isn't that great? He's like, "Could be. I don't know. I don't know the guy. Here's what I know. I was blind, but now I see. I was blind, but now I see." Like, I don't have all the data. I don't have all the information. I don't know all the things. All I know is that before Jesus, I couldn't see in the way I see now. And after Jesus, I'm seeing the world very differently, in a way and with colors that I did not know were possible. He's seen. And when you see, you can't unsee. And some of us in this room, we've had these experiences that have transformed us in ways. And once we've seen, we can't unsee. It's like that thing where you try to put stuff, like sometimes my kids will take the bag of cereal, one specific kid. Cohen, this is your public shaming. We'll open a brand new box of cereal, take the bag out, and pour it. It does not go back in the box the same way, right? You know what I'm talking about. The box it just doesn't fit right once you've taken it out of the box. And for those of us who have had these experiences, trying to put it all back in the box of conservative Christianity, of turn your brain off, of don't trust your eyes, don't trust your body, don't trust what you're experiencing, all of that, it doesn't go back in the box. Now, I do get why people say you need some sort of guide for making decisions, because it's important to know, like, how do I evaluate my experiences to know what might be helpful to hang on to and be formed by, and what I may need to not allow to form me so much. And for me, the Bible can play a role in that, sure, but I think there are some other questions that we can ask that are really helpful. And so, like this, the first one, does it make me a better human? My goodness, why don't we start there? Anybody else kind of raised religiously that it's almost like the idea of becoming a better person was bad? Like, if you're like, but I'm a good person, we're like, how good is good enough? You know what I mean? Like, that whole vibe. Like, no. I think our faith should make us better people, and if it doesn't, I think we need to let go of it. Like, if your faith is making you worse, and I have known people who were great people, had a religious conversion, and turned into somebody I did not want to spend my time around. If your faith does that, please, for the love of God and humanity, let it go. It's not Elsa, that thing, right? Like, it's not good for anyone. Does it expand my heart? Does it expand my capacity for love, for empathy, and for compassion? Does it actually make my heart more open to the people around me? Does it make me love more? You know, it's hard to believe people are filled with the love of Christ when they're yelling it at you. Does it make me love more? Does it cultivate human flourishing? In my mind, the gospel in 2023 is human flourishing for all of God's children. Does it lead toward that? Does it lead me into that? Does it lead me to participate in that? Does it lead me to work for that? Does it lead me to let that be what guides me? Is that making it more and more my compass? Or is it getting in the way of human flourishing? So I'm going to tell you a story to wrap up that I don't think I've ever told publicly in a sermon. I've told it privately a few times. I mean, it's a little embarrassing. It feels a little weird because I'm not, and I don't have a better term for this, I'm not really woo-woo. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's some people who are just woo-woo, and I love them. And they have a whole different vibe, and I love it. That's just not me, right? I'm more like, give me the facts, let me read, like that's my thing. And so I love people who are woo-woo. So I had this experience several years ago. I can't remember when it was. I do remember some details around it. It was really transformative for me, but it's a little woo-woo. And so I just want to paraphrase with, if you're not woo-woo, I'm not either. I think what I'm about to tell you is a little weird. But it was an experience I had. It was really transformative, so I'll share it. I remember I can't remember which kid. It was one of our kids' birthdays. And kids' birthday parties are so much fun. If hell were real, there'd be a room. And it would just be... and I was tasked with going to Walmart, which is a whole other room. A whole other room in this experience. And I was getting things for the party, like, some like paper plates, napkins. And I was turning down one of the aisles, and I was really annoyed. I was annoyed to be at Walmart. And I was annoyed because it seemed like that day people just would not get out of my way. Like, I'm on a mission. I'm here to get a few things. Move. Right? Like it seemed like every aisle I went down, somebody would block what I needed, and I was being, polite because that's what you do, but deep inside, I was screaming at these people. Like, get out of my way! Like that sort of level of just frustration. And I turned down the freezer aisle to get one of those vats, and I don't know how to describe it, of Neapolitan ice cream. It's like you need 3 people to carry it. You don't even scoop it out for the kids. You just set it on the floor, and they kind of Bob for Apple style eat it. Just this big thing of Neapolitan ice cream. And of course, there's this guy in my way. He had his shopping cart, and like he just wasn't moving. I don't know what he was doing. And so I look at this guy, and I just had this moment where I looked at him, and I felt so annoyed. And then in this moment, it just melted away. And I'm looking at this guy, and I'm starting to tear up, and it's weird. Because I'm in the middle of the ice cream aisle at Walmart staring at a stranger who, it felt like I stared at him for like 20 minutes, but I hope it was like just a few seconds. But I just looked at him and I was like, oh my gosh, this person is a person. Do you ever have that realization about somebody? Like, oh, that's a person like me. They're a person like me. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, he's got a life. He's got people he cares about. He's got stuff he is excited about. There are things that bring him joy. Like there are things that break his heart. There are things he's really scared about that he maybe doesn't even want to talk about out loud. Like I just recognized this person. And I was filled with this deep sense of love and compassion for this person who I didn't know. And I just noticed it sort of like I just felt connected to everybody and everything around me. It was the weirdest feeling, probably lasted a few seconds, felt like an hour. It was very, very brief. And then I just kind of came, like it was like the record scratched and life went back to normal speed and everything felt. But there was just this moment where I had this deep sense of, I'm actually seeing a person and I feel really connected to them and I feel really connected to everything around me. And now looking back on it, I have the language like, oh, I should have slipped off my shoes. Do you know what I'm saying? Like this moment where it was just so very real. And I don't know there's probably a really good scientific reason that happened. I don't know. Maybe it was the energy drink. I don't know. Maybe it was God. I don't know. But what I do know is that in that, for that moment, it filled me with a level of connection and compassion for everyone and everything around me that I had never felt before and really have maybe never felt since. And it changed the way I saw people, at least for a little while. But you know that I go back to that now when I'm super annoyed. I'll often think, oh, you remember that moment, the ice cream aisle at Walmart? Because that's where God does all of God's best work. Ice cream aisle at Walmart. And there's just this sense of like, oh no, there's a lot more going on here. There are moments, and maybe they aren't super dramatic. I'm really embarrassed I told that, but maybe there are moments for you where you've encountered a person, and there was none of that, but there was just this sense, something they said, something they did, that just made you have this sense, I need to take off my shoes. Something holy is happening. Something profound and life-changing is upon us. Maybe it was staring at a sunset, and you just had this sense of, I am like you had this Elton John circle of life moment where I'm connected to everything around me. I think experience is an invitation to pay attention. It's an invitation to pay attention to the things that inspire awe and wonder. It's an invitation to pay attention to the things that cause us to I don't know why, but I just need to slip off my shoes because the ground is so beautifully holy, and it always has been. Those moments where you feel more alive than you've ever felt before. Pay attention to those moments. And pay attention to those moments where all the lights on the dashboard are blinking and the sirens are going off and you're going, this doesn't lead to human flourishing. This is hurting me and it's harming me, and I don't care if they put scripture around it, and I don't care if they say Jesus at the end of it. This is toxic and it's bad, and I am going to get out of here. Are you with me? It's an invitation to pay attention to both of those kinds of moments, the ones that open us up and also the ones where we're like, oh no, peace out, I'm done. And I think what's really beautiful is all this happens in the ordinary. I didn't grow up in a church that followed the lectionary. Did anybody grow up in a church that followed the lectionary? This order of reading scripture. There are church seasons, and we didn't celebrate those either, but I've learned about them. And, there are the really fun ones like Advent. That's a great church season. And you have Lent, which is not so fun, but, people get excited about it. You have, Epiphany. You have Pentecost. You have Easter, the Super Bowl, right? We're in a season right now. Do you know what the season right now is called? Ordinary time. The marketing person wasn't in that meeting. Like, what season is it? I got it. Let's call it ordinary time. People will be stoked. There's no tree for ordinary time, right? There's none of that. It's kind of boring, but it's the bulk of the church year. And it's also the bulk of our lives. The bulk of our lives are not lived in sparkly moments. The bulk of our lives are lived in the everyday, boring monotony of our schedules, of our routines, of all the ordinary stuff we do every single day. It's the stuff where you sort of just do it on autopilot. You get the kids ready, you brush their hair, you get them in the car, you walk the dog, you go get groceries, all the stuff you do. That's the bulk of our lives. What I love about all of these stories in the Bible and about my own experience, and I bet yours too, is they really, the shaping moments, the transformative moments, the experiences that we're still mulling over and thinking about, they probably happened in ordinary time, in your ordinary life, because that's where the divine shows up. Because actually the divine doesn't really ever show up. The divine is always present. The ground is always holy. The divine is always saying, hey, there's another leg on the journey, let's go. The divine is always saying, you're going to go all sorts of different places and I'll be with you because I'm in you. You can't run or hide, really, I'm with you. It's the divine saying, okay, slip off your shoes for this one. This one is really, really important. It's the divine speaking your name and saying, you are my beloved and you bring me great joy. It's the moments of realizing everybody's in, and that makes it more fun. It's the moment of realizing, oh, God is revealing some things about God in me and the world in me, and it's changing everything. Pay attention to those moments because they open your heart. They enlarge your soul. They make you more compassionate, more loving, more kind, more generous, and beautifully, they work together to make human flourishing in this world a possibility for all of God's kids. Are you with me? Amen. Let's pray. God, we are grateful for this ordinary life and these ordinary moments. These moments where you don't show up, but we wake up to see what's always been true, to see in new shades of color and brightness. So many of us have been conditioned to not trust our heart, to not trust ourselves. May we feel a freedom begin to emerge. that we can be trusted, that our experiences do matter, and that we meet the divine in the beauty of the ordinary and the daily, and discover that we are all bound together, that we are all connected, and that we all belong. And for that, we are grateful. And everybody said,
we're together in this. Sure, we've got our own politics. Sure, we've got our own religions. But we're still together in this. We're together in this. Sure, we've got our own set of problems. Yeah, we've got our own things we wanna change. We're still in this together. I'll carry your weight, neighbor. You carry mine. We'll leave the battle far behind. Let love and peace become all that we need. Oh, we're still together in this. We're together in this. So put away your blood and your violence. Rest in solitude and in silence. 'Cause we're still together in this. Will y'all stand and sing this with us? I'll carry your weight, neighbor. You'll carry mine. And we'll leave the battle far behind. Let love and peace become all that we need. I'll carry yours, you'll carry mine. We'll leave the battles far behind. I'll carry yours, you'll carry 'cause we're still together in this. Such a beautiful day, Grace Point. We loved having you here. We love you. We're proud of you. We hope you have a good week. Again, the baptism is right this way where Josh is, through the doors. Make your way out there if you're going to stay. If not, we'll see you next week. We love you. Have a good one.